G'day friends! Welcome to today's WHIMSYWEEN video. I put on Instagram last week and you have chosen FrankenFrida. You also made me do it with watercolor over acrylic and gouache, and instead of using pens you wanted me to use pencils, which was good, I needed that. And you wanted me to use the scrap ephemera over the washi tape. So thank you everyone for voting. I know it doesn't look super close on those screenshots, but believe me, there were only a few, like a handful of votes between it, between, you know, either or, and I think it was a super fun idea. I want to thank Adele over at Inky Quill. I saw this on her Instagram. I think she was asking her patrons to choose between a bunch of things, and I messaged her immediately and I was like, this is an amazing idea, you should definitely run this as a challenge. So perhaps Adele might run this as a challenge on YouTube. If not, I just encourage you to get involved because it was a super fun thing to do. It very much so reminded me of Ali Brown's Slim Pickens challenge last year, where Steve got to choose 5 art supplies, I believe it was, from my craft cart, and I had to create something with that. Looking back on that now, I feel like I could have done a lot better of a job. But it is what it is, I was learning, so we'll leave that there. But this was kind of like that version of that, but instead of Steve choosing, you all got to choose, which was super fun, and it was more of a 50-50 chance than actually raiding through my craft cart. So it's a little different in idea, but not really at all. So I want to thank those two lovely creative women for, you know, unintentionally making me want to do this. It's always so fun to just be looking out for new things to try, and I have to say I take no credit for this challenge at all. But I do want to preface this with something. I was in a really weird place when I created this yesterday afternoon. I don't know if you've been over on Inktober following what's happening there, but I've been whinging my face off about having migraines and like splitting headaches, and I've got postnasal drip, I've got allergies and sinus problems, and I'm just kind of like basically falling apart and getting a bit run down before my holiday, which is not unusual for me, let's just be real. My body gets very dramatic like that. So as I've been struggling and whinging about that over there, I kind of wanted to do this and have this be my next WHIMSYWEEN video because I didn't want everyone to wait for so long after they had voted. But I was in a bit of a weird headspace because I still had that migraine and I was still struggling with all of my my whinging, and so I just wasn't in the best place when I did it, and I think that's kind of what led me to doing all of this craziness. It was just bizarre, like the things that I was choosing. I was putting greens in the skin and purples and blues and greys. The colors that I was choosing I thought were other colors. I don't know why, I just wasn't thinking. But in not thinking at all, I ended up with something so much fun. It is so against what I would normally do, and I can't say I'd ever really try it again, but I was so happy to have sat down and come up with this, and I want to thank you guys because it was you that chose all of these mediums, and I do think it would have been very different had I had to go in with acrylic, or perhaps I had to use pens instead of pencils. I think it would have been a completely different look. So thank you for giving me this this challenge today. I want to explain a few things about what I'm doing, but I think a lot of it is self-explanatory. Is that what I wanted to say? Basically, I'm just being very carefree, right? Just being very loose, just kind of using watercolor how I like to use watercolor. I like to use a lot of water and just abuse the page. Watercolor for me, I don't ever use it in flat washes really, because I don't associate watercolor as a medium to use when I want a flat look. If I wanted that, I would use acrylic or possibly even gouache and just not water it down a lot, or maybe even Copic marker if I wanted a flat block of color. I would never really typically try to do that with watercolor because it's a lot of extra steps, and I don't think it's necessary to use that if you could use another medium to get that. So I don't typically color block in watercolor like that for really flat layers of color. I use it for all the texture you can get. And I find the best way to get that texture is to use a lot of water in a lot of fun ways. Blot it out, you know, move it around again, splash some on there, wet the page before you do it, do wet on wet, do wet on dry, dry on wet, do it all the ways. But I find that it's a really great medium to work with because for the most part, a lot of them are transparent. You do have a bit more, there are a few watercolors that maybe have a bit more of a filler in them, or they're, especially if they're pastel, you'll notice there's a lot of a white filler in there, and so they don't become as transparent. But it's a really fun texture to play with is what I'm trying to get at. And not only that, but when you use pencils on top of them, pencils have their own kind of texture depending on what paper you're using them on. So I'm in the Jane Davenport large journal here, and I believe this is the back side of one of the textured pages. I think in this journal, I'm just speculating here because I've never heard of a paper being hot and cold press at the same time. It's just the way that the papers are pressed, and basically hot press is very smooth and cold press is very textured, and depending on which company does it and how they do it, you'll have some that have a really rough tooth and that will grab onto a lot of like pastel texture and crayons and pencils, and then you'll have some even cold press that will be a little bit more fine, and you can still see there's texture there, but it's not completely smooth. So I believe this journal is made with cold press paper, and that it's just, there's a difference, there's a lot of a difference between the front side and the back side of it. So I'm working on the back side of it. There is a bit more of a textured page on the back of this one, which I believe would have made even more texture. So this journal is unusual for that, in that sometimes I feel like I can really notice the difference between those textures, but for the most part, as I'm being like just kind of playing, it doesn't really get in my way. It's not like a problem. So just wanted to mention that because sometimes I do think about that and I feel like it's maybe something I should have mentioned. I don't know, is it? Does it even matter? Probably doesn't matter at all. Either way, I think it was because we're getting at texture, you know, watercolor texture. I've got the pencil texture. As I was adding the scrap ephemera, that was one of my biggest challenges because I didn't want to add too much since I had a lot going on. I did these little punch out ink blot kind of things for the Whimsyween prompt Hanging Moons. I was going to film a tutorial on it. I didn't end up getting around to it. I don't know if that's something that people wanted to see, because as I was doing it, I thought, this is really simple. Like, this is not even interesting to me. I was like, everyone knows how to put ink on a page and punch out a circle. It's not groundbreaking. So I kind of left that tutorial to the wayside, and I had all these little samples from it. So I decided to make that her hair. I was referencing one of Frida Kahlo's self-portraits. The only thing I kind of flipped was the earring. I put it on the other side because there was more negative space there, that little hand earring. And then to make it more Frankenstein, which I have to admit, I kind of forgot that it was FrankenFrida. I was so wrapped up in trying to do Frida that luckily, accidentally, I had added a lot of green around the eyes, and I'd gone for this more Picasso-style drawing where everything was a little off and a little blocked in, a little off-center and a little odd. And it kind of lent itself well to being Frankenstein in the end. And I had one Frankenstein idea, which was the eyebrow that I was going to put on the end, the hashtag brow and fleek. You'll see that at the end, and it's probably one of my favorite pieces, like my favorite parts of this whole thing. And unintentionally, as I was shading with all those random colors of pencils, I did end up putting green on that yellow hand earring, because I was going to do gold there and make it like a really fun gold earring, but I accidentally went in with the green, and it just then kind of looked like a Frankenstein hand, which was like unintentional, but I'm taking it. I've got my Pilot OPT mechanical pencil here. I have talked about this pencil a lot, and some people have tried it and have definitely had some success with it. I want to mention that I did change the lead out in this pencil, the graphite. I love the one that it came with, but I couldn't find the exact replacement when I went to replace that. So I believe, I don't know what brand I bought, but when I replaced the lead in this, I used a 2B strength lead, which is a little softer and therefore a lot darker. Like, you can get a lot more of a varied tone with that. You can get some really light grays and some really beautiful shading, but if you start pressing it in harder and harder and harder, you can get like a really rich, deep gray. So if that's something that you've noticed, and because I have had some people ask why my mechanical pencil seems to perform differently to theirs, I do believe that it is the lead. I think a lot of mechanical pencils come with an HB or something very regular because it's a sturdy kind of a lead, and it's such a fine lead anyway, you don't want it to snap everywhere. So the 2B is a little softer, and that's what I did change it out to, because I get a lot darker of a line. So when you're looking to replace the lead from your mechanical pencil, or the graphite I should say, possibly look for one that is maybe a 2B, maybe even a 3B. It depends on what you can get your hands on. I don't think it's very popular to have like a lot of those softer, darker leads available to mechanical pencils. Just logistically, it doesn't seem to make sense. But depending on what you can find, I think any good Japanese store will have absolutely everything. They tend to, don't they? There's a Mido down here that just, like, as small as that shop is, they seem to have everything I've ever wanted and more. Anyway, so I'm going in with the watercolor, and again, playing with that texture. I'm direct referencing this Frida Kahlo portrait. I'm sorry I don't remember the name of it, but honestly, if you type in Google Frida Kahlo portrait, I feel like this is the first one that comes up. And yeah, I love that the Frankenstein vibes just happened accidentally, because like I said, my brain was not working. I was like, pardon me for keeping on whinging, but I've just had so many headaches and like splitting migraines over the past couple of days, and I've just not been feeling the best, just been feeling really run down. So not being in my right headspace, I just think all of these happy accidents came. I don't know what I can really take credit for here, or should I even want to take credit for it? I mean, look at it, it's crazy. But I had a lot of fun doing it, even in that state. Even as my brain was trying to ditch me, I had a really great time doing it. And I think it's because it was so bizarre. Like, it was so different to anything that I would do. I still see parts of me in it, and I still see parts of like things that I like to do. I think when I mentioned in that Inktober video more recently, as you continue to play, even when you're trying new things, you will unintentionally do what you still like to do. So you can still see that I love putting so much water in the watercolors and getting all those textures. I love to shade. I love to add lots of dumb little details that I don't need to add. Like, even composition-wise, I've chosen to do more of a portrait and a bust instead of doing a full figure. It's so funny because I used to always do full figures, and now I find that I rarely do a full figure. Not like a fuller figure, but like an actual full human body. Just because I like to focus on more detail work now. It used to be all about the fashion for me. I used to be so into fashion illustration that I didn't even care about the face. I just needed the body to put the clothes on. But now I just really care about the face. I care about the expression or the mood or the look or the vibe. All that kind of stuff. And then I start to play with all the mediums that I like. And even if it's stuff that I'm not super confident with, or if it's a completely new mix, like I have played a lot with watercolor and pencil before. It is a really beautiful combination of mediums to play with, especially to easily build texture. I think it's probably the easiest way to get a lot of a textured piece is with watercolor and pencil. You've got the texture of the pencil and you've got the texture of the watercolor. I think it's like a win-win. It just kind of synergizes and makes it like ultra texture. But I just had such a great time playing with it all that even though I don't necessarily think I would ever do this again, I just kind of loved it. I loved the process, even in that headspace, even with that migraine. I don't know, I just kind of enjoyed the process. It was very therapeutic. It was still challenging in a way. So yeah, total win. Thank you so much for voting. I hope you didn't vote to try and stump me, because I had a great time. Or I hope you did. Did anyone out there vote for something they thought that I would be really stumped over? Honestly, I thought I would be. To be fair, if I was going to choose anything, what I actually wanted to do from that, I wanted to do WHIMSYWEEN, I wanted to do gouache, I wanted to do pens, and I wanted to do washi tape. So literally everything opposite to what you chose is what I was hoping that I was going to get to do, but I can just do that video by myself anyway. Like, there's no reason I can't do it. But this was a really fun challenge, so thank you again for everyone that voted. If you want to try this, please do. It is super fun. It's like actually really fun. So I want you to try this, even if you don't make videos or you don't post to YouTube or anything. If you just want to do that, if you have a few friends on Instagram that you think might participate and help you out with a bit of a challenge, it would be really, really interesting to see what people wanted to see from you. It's I don't know, it's kind of exciting. Did anyone expect that this was what was going to come out? Anyone that voted for FrankenFrida, is this what you turned up for? I definitely turned up for that stitched eyebrow. I mean, that's it. Some designs by Rachel Beth, copper candles. Yes, please. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the piece. Thank you again to Adele for the idea. I am so excited to hopefully try this again really soon and see what we can come up with. I don't know, maybe I need to get migraines more often and see where I can put myself in that headspace. Maybe I just really need to turn my brain off, because even though I don't want this to become something I try often, I can appreciate how different this is and how it really pushed me outside of a comfort zone. So thank you again. How many times can I say thank you in one video? I'll be back with another WHIMSYWEEN video very soon. Until then, yeah, have a great day. Bye.